The galactic trade vessel Horizon's Edge was dying. Smoke poured from its engines. Sparks flew from broken wires. The ship had barely made it to Way Station Kepler 7 before the main engine gave up completely. Taiho wiped the sweat from his face and looked at the damage. He had been working as a mechanic on this ship for 2 years. He had seen bad days before, but this was something else. The engine room looked like a bomb had gone off inside it. "How bad is it?" asked the captain through the communicator. Taiho didn't want to answer. The truth was ugly. "Bad enough that we might need a new ship, sir." The captain swore and cut the connection. Taiho was 28 years old. He was not tall. He was not strong. He had messy black hair and oil stains on his face that never seemed to wash off completely. But he was good at his job. He could fix things that other mechanics called impossible. That was why the captain kept him around. The way station was busy with other ships. Merchants sold goods. Travelers looked for transport. Aliens of all kinds walked through the metal corridors. Taiho had seen many species in his years of space travel. Tall ones, short ones, some with scales, some with feathers. The galaxy was full of strange and wonderful creatures, but Taiho had no time to look at the crowds. He had work to do. The captain ordered the crew to check all the cargo. Some of it had been damaged in the accident. Taiho was sent to inspect the lower cargo bay. It was the oldest part of the ship. Dark, cold, full of forgotten containers. He walked through the rows of metal boxes with a small flashlight. Most of the cargo was fine. Some boxes had fallen over. A few had cracked open. Nothing serious. Then he saw something strange. In the far corner of the bay, hidden behind stacks of old equipment, there was a cryopod. It was not on the official cargo list. Someone had put it here secretly. The pod was old and damaged. Its power was failing. Red warning lights blinked weakly in the darkness. Taiho walked closer. Through the frosted glass, he could see a shape inside. A body. Something alive. He wiped the ice from the glass and looked inside. It was an Luporian. Taiho had heard of them before. They were a proud warrior species. They looked like wolves that walked on 2 legs. They were tall, strong, and covered in thick fur. Most of them had gray or brown fur. Some had black, but this one was different. This Luporian had pure white fur. Like snow, like milk. And when Taiho looked closer, he saw that its eyes were closed, but the eyelids were pink. An albino. He checked the data screen on the side of the pod. The information made his stomach turn. Name: Yuri. Species: Luporian. Condition: albino. Status: defective cargo. No buyer found. Marked for disposal: defective cargo. That was what they called her. Like she was a broken machine. Like she was trash. Taiho felt anger rise in his chest. He had been called worthless before. He knew what it felt like to be thrown away. He pressed more buttons on the screen. More information appeared. Yuri had been sold by her own family when she was young. Albinos were considered cursed among the Luporians. Bad luck, a shame to the bloodline. She had been passed from owner to owner for years. No one wanted to keep her. Now she was here, in a dying pod, waiting to be recycled like garbage. Taiho made a decision. He disconnected the pod from the ship's failing power and connected it to his personal battery pack. The red lights turned yellow. The pod was stable for now. He went to find the station medics. The medical bay of Way Station Kepler 7 was clean and bright. Doctors of many species worked there. Taiho found the head medic, a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. "I found a Luporian in a cryopod," Taiho said. "She needs medical help. The pod is failing." The medic looked at him with cold eyes. "A Luporian? What kind?" "An albino." The medic's expression changed. It was not sympathy. It was disgust. We don't treat cursed ones here. The Luporians have made it clear. Anyone who helps their albinos will lose trading rights with their empire. I'm sorry, human. Find somewhere else. Taiho tried other doctors. He tried the station hospital. He tried private clinics. The answer was always the same. No one would help. Finally, he went to the station master. The station master was a fat alien with green scales and a bad attitude. He sat behind a large desk covered in papers and food wrappers. I need help with a medical emergency, Taiho said. The station master laughed. You're the human from the broken ship, right? I heard about your little discovery. The albino Wolf. Her name is Yuri. I don't care what its name is. That thing is marked for disposal. The previous owners paid good money to have it recycled quietly. You're going to take that pod to the recycling bay and forget you ever saw it. Taiho stared at him. She's alive. Not for long. And that's not your problem. The station master waved his hand. Go away. I have real work to do. Taiho left the office. His hands were shaking. Not from fear. From anger. He walked back to the cargo bay. The cryopod was still there, glowing weakly in the darkness. Through the glass, he could see Yuri's face. She looked peaceful. She had no idea that people were planning to kill her while she slept. Taiho was not a hero. He was just a mechanic. He fixed engines and pipes and broken machines. He didn't fight. He didn't save lives. He was nobody special. But he couldn't walk away from this. He looked around the cargo bay. No one was watching. The crew was busy with other problems. The captain didn't care about forgotten cargo. Taiho grabbed the handles of the cryopod and began to pull. The pod was heavy. Very heavy. His arms burned. His back screamed in pain. But he didn't stop. He pulled the pod through the cargo bay, through the corridors, through the airlock, and onto the docking platform. His personal shuttle was small. It was old. It was called the Rusty Comet, and the name was accurate. But it was his. He had bought it with years of savings. He loaded the cryopod into the shuttle's cargo space. It barely fit. He had to remove a wall panel to make room. As he worked, a security guard walked by. The guard looked at Taiho, looked at the pod, then shrugged and kept walking. Nobody cared about defective cargo. Taiho closed the shuttle door and sat in the pilot's seat. His heart was beating fast. He had just stolen something. He could go to prison for this. But when he looked back at the cryopod, at the white-furred figure sleeping inside, he didn't feel like a criminal. He felt like he was finally doing something right. The Rusty Comet lifted off from Way Station Kepler 7 and flew into the darkness of space. Behind them, the horizon's edge grew smaller and smaller until it disappeared. Taiho didn't know what he was going to do next. He didn't have a plan. He didn't have money for doctors. He didn't have any idea how to help an albino, Luporian, but he knew one thing for certain. He was not going to let her die alone. The Rusty Comet drifted through empty space, far from any planet, far from any station. Just darkness and stars in every direction. Taiho had been working for 3 days, without sleep. The cryopod was old and broken. Its systems were failing one by one. The temperature inside was rising slowly. If he didn't fix it soon, Yuri would either wake up wrong or not wake up at all. He sat on the floor of his tiny ship, surrounded by tools and spare parts. Wires hung from the ceiling. Metal plates covered the walls. The Rusty Comet was more workshop than home. Every corner was filled with something Taiho had collected over the years. Broken machines, scrap metal, old engines, things other people threw away. He called it junk. But to him, junk was just something waiting to be useful again. The cryopod's cooling system was the main problem. A part called the thermal regulator had cracked. Taiho didn't have a replacement, but he had something close. He took apart an old air conditioner he had found in a garbage pile 2 years ago. Inside was a component that was almost the right size. Almost was not good enough. So he spent 6 hours modifying it, cutting, welding, adjusting. His fingers bled from the sharp edges. His eyes burned from staring at tiny circuits. But he didn't stop. On the third night, the cryopod finally showed a green light. Taiho let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. The pod was stable. Now came the hard part. Waking her up. The cryo-revival process was complicated. Taiho had read about it but never done it himself. He followed the instructions on the pod screen very carefully. First, raise the temperature slowly. Then, inject the revival medicine. Then, wait. The waiting was the worst part. He sat in a chair next to the pod and watched the frost melt from the glass. Slowly, very slowly, the figure inside began to move. First a finger, then an ear, then the chest rising and falling with breath. The eyes opened. They were pink. Bright pink, like flowers Taiho had seen in pictures of Earth. They looked around wildly, confused and scared. Then they locked onto Taiho. The Luporian moved fast. Faster than Taiho expected. The pod door burst open and a white-furred body lunged at him. Claws reached for his throat. Teeth flashed in the dim light. But then something went wrong. Yuri's legs didn't work. She fell forward, crashing onto the metal floor. Her upper body was strong, but her legs dragged behind her like dead weight. She tried to stand but couldn't. She crawled toward Taiho, still trying to attack, still snarling and growling. Taiho didn't run. He just sat there in his chair, watching her. Yuri stopped crawling. She was panting hard. Her pink eyes were full of fear and confusion. "What did you do to me?" she demanded. Her voice was rough from years of sleep. "Where am I? Who are you?" "I'm Taiho," he said calmly. "I'm a mechanic. I found you in a broken cryopod. I fixed it, my legs." She looked down at her useless limbs. "What happened to my legs?" Taiho had read about this in the pod's medical records. Nerve damage. The cryofreeze wasn't done properly. Whoever put you in that pod didn't care if you survived. Yuri's face twisted with pain. Not physical pain. Something deeper. "They never cared," she whispered. Then her expression hardened again. "Why didn't you let me die? Why would I do that?" She laughed. It was a bitter, ugly sound. "Because I'm cursed. Because I'm worthless. Because everyone who touches me loses everything." She dragged herself backward, away from him. "You're a fool, human. You should have left me in that pod. You should have thrown me into space. That's what everyone else does." Taiho stood up and walked to his small kitchen area. He lit a small stove and started heating something in a pot. The smell of food filled the ship. "What are you doing?" Yuri asked. "Making soup." "I don't want your soup." "Too bad. You've been frozen for a long time. You need to eat." Yuri watched him with suspicious eyes. She didn't understand this human. In her experience, everyone wanted something. Food was never free. Kindness was never real. There was always a price. Taiho poured the soup into a bowl and brought it to her. He set it on the floor within her reach and then sat down a few feet away. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said. "I'm not going to sell you. I'm not going to do anything to you. Then why did you save me?" Taiho thought about that question. He had been asking himself the same thing for 3 days. The answer was simple, but also complicated. "Because no one else would," he said finally. Yuri stared at him. In her whole life, no one had ever said those words to her. No one had ever helped her without wanting something in return. She didn't know how to respond. So she said nothing. The soup sat on the floor between them. Steam rose from the bowl. Minutes passed. Finally, slowly, Yuri reached out and took the bowl. She drank the soup in quick, hungry gulps. It was warm and simple. Nothing special. But it was the best thing she had ever tasted. When the bowl was empty, she looked at Taiho again. "What now?" "Now I fix you." "You can't fix me. My legs are dead. I'm useless." Taiho smiled. It was a small, tired smile. "I'm a mechanic. I fix broken things. That's what I do." He gestured at the ship around them. "You see all this junk? Other people threw it away. They said it was useless. But I took it and made it work again." He pointed at her legs. "You're not useless. You're just broken. And broken things can be fixed." Yuri didn't believe him. How could she? Her whole life had taught her that she was wrong, defective, a mistake of nature. Her own parents had sold her because they couldn't stand to look at her. Her own species had declared her cursed. But something in Taiho's eyes was different. He wasn't looking at her with pity or disgust. He was looking at her like she was a problem to solve, a challenge to overcome, a machine to repair. "You're crazy," she said. "Maybe." Taiho stood up and walked to his workbench. He started pulling out metal pieces and wires. But crazy is better than cruel. Over the next few days, Taiho measured Yuri's legs. He studied her body structure. He looked at medical files and engineering documents. He drew designs on paper and then threw them away and drew new ones. Yuri watched him work. She didn't help. She couldn't help. She just lay on a blanket in the corner and watched this strange human who had saved her life for no reason at all. "What are you building?" she asked one day. "An exoskeleton. A metal frame that will let you walk again. That's impossible." "No, it's not. I've seen them before. Humans use them for people with injured spines. It's not perfect. It's not like having real legs. But it works." Yuri was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since she woke up. "What do you want from me? When this is over, what do you expect in return?" Taiho looked up from his work. His eyes met hers. "Nothing. Everyone wants something. Not me." He went back to his work. "When you can walk again, you can leave. Go wherever you want. Do whatever you want. I won't stop you." Yuri didn't understand. This made no sense. No one was this kind without a reason. But as she watched Taiho work through the night, his hands steady and his focus complete, she began to wonder if maybe, just maybe, she had finally found someone who saw her as something more than a curse. And that small hope, fragile and strange, was the first real feeling she had felt in a very long time. 6 weeks had passed since Yuri woke up on the rusty comet. The exoskeleton was finished. Taiho had built it from scrap metal, old servos, and spare parts from machines that should have been thrown away long ago. It was not beautiful. It was rough and heavy and made clicking sounds when it moved. But it was strong. Yuri stood in the middle of the cargo bay, her lower body wrapped in metal and wire. Her legs were locked inside the frame. Her feet were strapped to metal plates. Her hands gripped 2 rails that Taiho had built for support. "Okay," Taiho said, standing nearby with a control pad. "I'm going to turn it on. Start slow. Don't try to move too fast." Yuri nodded. Her heart was beating hard. She had not stood on her own feet in years. She had almost forgotten what it felt like. Taiho pressed a button. The exoskeleton hummed to life. Motors whirred. The metal frame around her legs shifted and straightened. Slowly, impossibly, Yuri rose to her full height. She was tall. Much taller than Taiho. Luporians were a big species, and standing up, she towered over the small human mechanic. "How does it feel?" Taiho asked. Yuri couldn't answer. Her throat was tight. Her eyes were burning. She looked down at her legs, encased in metal, holding her up for the first time in so long. Trying to take a step, Taiho said gently. Yuri tried. She thought about moving her right leg forward. The sensors in the exoskeleton detected the tiny muscle movements and responded. The metal leg swung forward, and Yuri fell. She crashed to the floor with a loud bang. The exoskeleton protected her from injury, but the shame hit harder than any physical pain. Again, Taiho said, helping her up. She fell again. And again. And again. By the end of the first day, Yuri had fallen 47 times. Her body was exhausted. Her spirit was crushed. She lay on the floor, refusing to get up. This is stupid, she growled. It doesn't work. I can't do it. You can, Taiho said. It just takes time. I don't have time. I don't have anything. I don't have anything. She slammed her fist against the floor. I'm cursed. I've always been cursed. Nothing good ever happens to me. Taiho sat down next to her on the cold metal floor. He didn't say anything for a long moment. Then he spoke softly. When I was 19, I worked on a mining colony. It was a dangerous place. The company didn't care about safety. They only cared about money. He paused. One day, there was an accident. A tunnel collapsed. 30 workers were trapped underground. I was one of them. Yuri turned her head to look at him. We sent emergency signals. We begged for help. But the company calculated the cost of a rescue mission. They decided it was cheaper to let us die and hire new workers. Taiho's voice was calm, but there was old pain hidden in his words. They left us there, in the dark, waiting to die. How did you survive? A freighter captain heard our signal. She wasn't supposed to be in that sector. She was just passing through. She could have ignored us. It would have been easier, safer, but she didn't. Taiho smiled at the memory. She landed her ship, dug through the rubble with her own hands, and pulled us out one by one. When I couldn't walk because my leg was broken, she carried me. Yuri was quiet. Her name was Captain Bora. She was old and grumpy, and she complained the whole time. But she saved 17 people that day. For no reason. For no reward. Just because she could. Taiho looked at Yuri. Someone carried me when I couldn't walk. Now it's my turn to carry someone else. That's all this is. Yuri didn't know what to say. In her culture, weakness was shameful. Asking for help was admitting defeat. Being carried was the ultimate humiliation. But Taiho didn't see it that way. To him, helping someone was not about weakness or strength. It was just what people did for each other. The next day, Yuri got up and tried again. She fell. She fell many times. But she kept getting up. 2 weeks later, a new person arrived on the ship. Her name was Gia. She was a young human engineer. Only 23 years old, with short hair and bright eyes that were always curious about everything. Taiho had hired her to help with a repair contract on a distant station. Gia was not afraid of anything. When she first saw Yuri, a 7-foot-tall wolf alien with white fur and metal legs, she didn't run or scream. She just walked up and stuck out her hand. Hi, I'm Gia. You must be Yuri. Taiho told me about you. Your exoskeleton is really cool. Did he build that? He's so good at building things. One time he made a working engine out of kitchen appliances. It was amazing. Yuri stared at the tiny human. You talk a lot. I know. It's a problem. But also maybe not a problem because talking is how we communicate, right? Anyway, do you want to play cards? I brought cards. Do Luporians play cards? Yuri had never met anyone like Gia. The young engineer treated her like a normal person. Not a monster. Not a curse. Just a CREWMAT. It was strange and uncomfortable, and somehow, slowly nice. The three of them fell into a routine. Taiho fixed things. Gia helped him and talked constantly about everything. Yuri practiced walking and tried not to fall too much. At night, they ate together in the small kitchen. Taiho cooked simple meals. They were not very good, but no one complained. One evening, Gia asked Yuri about her home. "What's your planet like?" "I've never met a Luporian before." "Are there lots of forests?" "I read that Luporians like forests." Yuri's expression darkened. "I don't have a home?" "Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to make you sad." "You didn't." Yuri looked down at her metal legs. "I was born wrong. My fur is white when it should be gray. My eyes are pink when they should be yellow. Among my people, this means I am cursed. Bad luck. A shame to my bloodline." Gia's eyes went wide. "That's terrible." "It's just a color. Colors don't make someone bad. Try telling that to my parents. They sold me when I was 5 years old. They couldn't stand to look at me anymore." The table went quiet. Gia looked like she might cry. Even Taiho's face was tight with anger. "Well," Gia said finally, her voice firm, "your parents were stupid and wrong, and I hope they step on something sharp every day for the rest of their lives." Yuri blinked. Then, for the first time since she woke up, she laughed. It was a small laugh. Rough and awkward. But it was real. After dinner, Gia taught Yuri how to play a card game called Go Stop. Yuri was bad at it at first, but she learned fast. Soon she was winning most of the games, and Gia was accusing her of cheating. "Your eyes are too good. You can see the cards before I play them." "That's not how eyes work," Yuri said, but she was almost smiling. Taiho watched him play and felt something warm in his chest. His ship had always been quiet. Just him and his machines in the endless darkness of space. But now there was noise, laughter, life. It was nice. Later that night, when Gia was asleep, Yuri found Taiho working on the engine. "Why do you keep helping me?" she asked. "I told you already." "No, I mean really. There must be a reason. No one does anything for free." Taiho put down his wrench and looked at her. "Maybe I just like fixing things. And maybe I don't think you're as broken as you think you are." Yuri wanted to argue. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was cursed, that everyone who helped her would suffer. But looking at this small, stubborn human with oil on his face and kindness in his eyes, she found that she couldn't. Maybe, she thought, just maybe, being carried wasn't so shameful after all. The alarm screamed through the rusty comet like a wounded animal. Taiho jumped out of his bed and ran to the cockpit. Gia was already there, her face pale in the red emergency lights. Yuri was pulling herself along the wall, her exoskeleton humming as she moved. "What's happening?" Taiho asked. Gia pointed at the radar screen. A large shape was moving toward them, fast. A ship. A big one. It came out of nowhere. Taiho looked at the readings. His blood went cold. "That's a Luporian warship." Yuri's face went white. Whiter than her fur. No. You know them. They're hunters." Her voice was shaking. "They track down albinos. They kill us before we can be seen by other species. They call it cleansing the bloodline." The communication screen flickered to life. A face appeared. A Luporian face. Dark gray fur. Yellow eyes. A long scar running from his forehead to his chin. "I am Varn," the Luporian said. His voice was deep and cold. "Commander of the Cleansing Blade, we have tracked the Cursed One to your ship. Surrender her now, and we will let you live." Taiho stepped in front of the screen. "Her name is Yuri, and she's not going anywhere." Varn's eyes narrowed. "You are human. Small. Weak. You cannot possibly think you can fight us. I'm not thinking about fighting. I'm thinking about not giving up my crewmate. Crewmate? Varn laughed. It was an ugly sound. That thing is not a crewmate. It is a stain. A mistake. An embarrassment to our entire species. We have been hunting it for years. Its previous owners were paid well to dispose of it quietly. They failed. You will not. She's alive. She's a person. You can't just kill someone because they look different. Different? Varn leaned closer to the camera. His yellow eyes were full of hatred. You do not understand, human. Among my people, albinos are cursed. They bring death and misfortune wherever they go. Every ship that has carried this creature has met disaster. Every owner has suffered. You will too, if you keep it. That's superstition. That's not real. It is real enough. Now, surrender the albino, or we will board your ship and take it by force. You have 5 minutes. The screen went dark. Gia looked at Taiho. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes were determined. What do? We fight. We can't fight a warship. We're not fighting the warship. We're fighting the boarding party. Taiho was already moving, grabbing tools and parts. They won't destroy the ship while Yuri is inside. They need to confirm the kill. That means they have to board us. And this is my ship. I know every corner, every wire, every weakness. Yuri grabbed his arm. Don't, please. They'll kill you. Just give me to them. It's not worth dying for me. Taiho looked at her. Really looked at her. Yes, it is. He turned to Gia. You know the coolant system in Section 3? The one that keeps leaking? I want you to make it leak more. A lot more. When I give the signal, then all the coolant into the corridor. Gia nodded. She understood. Coolant was not deadly, but it was extremely cold and would freeze anything it touched. A nasty surprise for unwanted guests. Yuri, Taiho said, can you shoot? I can barely walk. That's not what I asked. Can you shoot? Yuri's pink eyes hardened. Yes, I can shoot. Taiho handed her a plasma pistol. Then find a position with good cover and don't miss. The next 5 minutes were chaos. Taiho ran through the ship, setting traps. He overloaded power conduits that would explode when touched. He loosened floor panels that would collapse under heavy weight. He rigged doors to lock behind intruders, trapping them in dead-end corridors. Gia prepared the coolant system. She also grabbed a heavy wrench. Just in case, she said. Yuri positioned herself behind a stack of cargo crates. Her legs were locked in place. She couldn't move, but she didn't need to. She just needed to aim. The warship connected to the rusty comet with a loud clang. The airlock hissed open. Vaughn led the boarding party himself. 6 Luporian warriors followed him. They were huge, each one nearly 8 feet tall, covered in muscle and armed with energy blades and pulse rifles. They expected no resistance. Humans were weak, fragile, armless. They were wrong. The first warrior stepped on a loose floor panel. It collapsed, and he fell into a maintenance shaft below. His screams echoed through the ship. The second warrior touched the door control. The overloaded circuit exploded, sending sparks and shrapnel into his face. He stumbled back, blinded. Varn snarled. Spread out. Find them. 2 warriors went left, towards Section 3. They moved carefully, checking every corner. They were trained hunters. Professional killers. They didn't see Gia hiding above them in the ventilation shaft. Now, Taiho's voice came through her communicator. Gia pulled the release valve. Freezing coolant poured down from the ceiling like a waterfall. The 2 warriors screamed as the cold hit them. Their fur froze solid. Their muscles locked up. They collapsed to the floor, unable to move. Gia dropped down from the shaft and hit one of them with her wrench. That's for trying to kill my friend." Varn and the remaining warriors pushed deeper into the ship. They found Taiho in the engine room, holding a welding torch. "End of the line, human," Varn said. "Where's the albino?" "Behind you." Varn spun around. Yuri was there, standing in the doorway. Her white fur glowed in the dim light. Her pink eyes burned with anger. And in her hands was a plasma pistol pointed directly at Varn's chest. "Hello, Hunter," she said. The fight was brutal and short. Varn was fast. He threw an energy blade at Yuri. She dodged, but the movement threw off her exoskeleton's balance. She fell against the wall, barely staying upright. Taiho attacked Varn from behind with the welding torch. The flame hit the warrior's arm, burning through fur and flesh. Varn howled and spun around, backhanding Taiho across the room. Gia charged in with her wrench. One of the warriors grabbed her and threw her against the wall. She hit hard and didn't get up. Yuri saw her friend fall. Something snapped inside her. She raised her pistol. Her hands were steady. Her aim was perfect. She fired 3 times. The warrior who hurt Gia dropped first. Then the second warrior. Then, as Varn turned toward her, she put a bolt directly through his shoulder. Varn fell to his knees, clutching his wound. Blood soaked his gray fur. His yellow eyes were wide with shock. "Impossible," he gasped. "You're an albino. You're supposed to be weak, cursed." Yuri limped toward him, her exoskeleton clicking with each step. She stood over him, tall and terrible, her pink eyes like fire. "I am cursed," she said. "Cursed to survive every time someone tries to kill me. Cursed to keep living when everyone wants me dead. And cursed to watch fools like you bleed at my feet." She pressed the pistol against his forehead. "Wait." Taiho's voice was weak, but firm. He was struggling to sit up, blood running from a cut on his head. "Don't kill him." "Why not?" "He would have killed me. He would have killed all of us." "I know. But you're not like him." Yuri's hand trembled. Every part of her wanted to pull the trigger. To end the man who had hunted her across the galaxy. To finally have revenge. But she looked at Taiho, at Gia, who was groaning and waking up. At these humans who had fought and bled for her. She lowered the gun. "Take your warriors," she said to Varn. "Leave this sector. If I ever see you again, I won't stop." Varn looked at her with hatred in his eyes. But he was beaten. His warriors were frozen, burned, and shot. He had no choice. He gathered his crew and retreated to his ship. Minutes later, the warship disconnected and flew away into the darkness. Taiho limped over to Yuri. His face was bruised, his arm was burned, and he was smiling. "We did it." Yuri stared at him. "We almost died, but we didn't." Gia sat up, rubbing her head. "Did we win? Please tell me we won. My everything hurts." Yuri looked at these 2 small, fragile humans who had fought a Luporian hunting party for her, who had risked everything for someone they barely knew. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. "Yeah," she said quietly. "We won." 1 year had passed since the battle with Varn. The rusty comet had changed. It was still old, still rough around the edges, but it was no longer just a mechanic's workshop floating through space. It was a home. Taiho had added new rooms, a proper kitchen, a small medical bay, a training area where Yuri practiced fighting with her upgraded exoskeleton. The ship that was once too quiet was now filled with noise, laughter, and the smell of cooking food. The crew had grown too. Word had spread through the outer systems about a small repair ship that never turned away those in need. People came to them with broken engines and broken hearts. They left with both repaired. Yuri's exoskeleton was different now. The rough scrap metal had been replaced with smooth, strong alloy. The clicking sounds were gone. The movements were fluid and natural. She could walk, run, and even fight without thinking about it. She was the ship's head of security. Anyone who threatened the rusty comet had to get through her first. Not many tried. Those who did regretted it quickly. The story of the albino who defeated a Luporian hunting party had spread far. At first, Yuri hated the attention. She wanted to hide from her past, not be reminded of it, but then something unexpected happened. A small Luporian ship arrived at their docking station one day. Yuri's hand went to her weapon automatically. But the door opened, and instead of warriors, a young female stepped out. She was small for a Luporian. Her fur was pale brown with white patches. Her eyes were one yellow, one pink. She was shaking with fear. "Are you the one they call the White Wolf?" The young female asked. Yuri didn't know how to answer. She had never had a title before. "My name is Yuri. I'm Nara. I ran away from home. They were going to send me to the hunters." Nara's voice cracked. "I heard about you. About a cursed one who survived. Who fought back. Who found a place where she belonged." She looked at Yuri with desperate hope. "Is it true?" Yuri looked at this young girl who reminded her so much of herself. Scared. Alone. Unwanted. "It's true," she said. "Come inside. You're safe here." Nara was the first. She was not the last dot. Over the months that followed, more came. Young Luporians born different. Albinos. Hybrids. Those with the wrong fur color or the wrong eye shape. They came from across the galaxy, following rumors of a white wolf who protected the unwanted. The rusty comet couldn't hold them all. But Taiho found other ships. Other captains who were willing to help. A small network formed, hidden in the outer systems, offering shelter to those who had none. Yuri became something she never imagined. Not a curse. Not a shame. A symbol. The Luporian government was not happy. One day, a formal shuttle arrived. It was elegant and expensive, covered in symbols of the old bloodlines. A Luporian elder stepped out. He was ancient, his gray fur faded to silver, his yellow eyes clouded with age. "I am Elder Juan," he announced. "I speak for the Council of Blood. I have come to deliver a message to the one called Yuri." Yuri met him at the airlock. She stood tall in her exoskeleton, towering over the old male. Behind her, Taiho and Gia watched carefully. "Speak your message," Yuri said. Elder Juan looked at her with cold disgust. "By the laws of our people, you are hereby formally exiled. You are no longer Luporian. You have no bloodline. You have no name. You have no rights to our territory, our resources, or our protection. You are nothing." Yuri had expected this moment for a long time. She had prepared herself for the pain of being officially rejected by her own species. But standing here, looking at this old fool who had come all this way just to tell her she was worthless, she felt nothing. No, that wasn't true. She felt free. "I already have a pack," she said, gesturing to Taiho and Gia. Elder Juan's face twisted. "These are humans. Weak creatures, soft, fragile. They are not worthy of being called pack. They carried me when I couldn't walk." Yuri stepped forward, and the elder stepped back. "They fought for me when I had no value. They saw me when my own kind looked away." She leaned down, bringing her face close to his. Her pink eyes burned with quiet fire. "You asked me what pack I belong to. I belong to the one that chose me. Not because of my blood. Not because of my fur. Because of who I am." Elder Juan had no response. He had expected tears, begging, perhaps even anger. Not this calm, unshakable strength. He turned and walked back to his shuttle without another word. Minutes later, the elegant ship flew away into space. Gia let out a breath she had been holding. "That was amazing. You were so cool. Did you see his face? He looked like he ate something rotten." Taiho smiled. How do you feel? Yuri thought about it. For years, being Luporian was the only identity she had. Even though her people hated her, she had still been one of them. Now she was officially nothing. An exile. A creature without a species. But looking at Taiho and Gia, at Nara peeking out from behind a doorway, at the ship that had become her home, she realized that losing her old identity had made room for a new one. I feel good, she said. And she meant it. That night, the crew of the Rusty Comet gathered for dinner. It was a tradition now. Every evening, no matter how busy they were, they sat together and shared a meal Taiho cooked. He was still not very good at it. The rice was burned on the bottom. The vegetables were too soft. But nobody complained. Gia talked constantly about a new engine design she was working on. She drew diagrams on napkins and got excited about things nobody else understood. Nara was quiet, but she was smiling. She had found a place where she didn't have to hide, and Yuri sat at the head of the table, eating 3 servings of burned rice and thinking about how strange life was. 1 year ago, she had been frozen in a broken pod, waiting to die. She had been cargo, trash, something to be recycled and forgotten. Now she had a home. She had a family. She had people who loved her, not despite what she was, but because of who she was. What are you thinking about? Taiho asked. Yuri looked at him. This small human with messy hair and oil stains on his face. The man who had carried her when no one else would. The man who had seen value in something everyone else threw away. I'm thinking about how lucky I am, she said. Gia gasped dramatically. Yuri said something nice. Mark the calendar. This is historic. Shut up, Yuri growled, but she was almost smiling. After dinner, Yuri walked to the observation deck. She stood at the large window and looked out at the stars. Billions of lights in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there, her birth parents were living their lives without her. Somewhere out there, Varn was nursing his wounds and plotting revenge. Somewhere out there, millions of beings were being told they were worthless because they were born different. But here, on this small, battered ship flying through the void, Yuri had found something rare. She had found people who carried each other. Taiho appeared beside her. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, looking at the stars. Thank you, Yuri said quietly. For what? For not letting me die. For building me new legs. For fighting for me. For everything. Taiho shrugged. You would have done the same for me. Yuri thought about it. A year ago, she wouldn't have. A year ago, she would have let anyone die if it meant surviving another day. That was how she had been taught to live. But Taiho and Gia had taught her something different. They had taught her that strength was not about surviving alone. It was about carrying others when they couldn't walk. It was about fighting for people who couldn't fight for themselves. It was about seeing value in things that the world called worthless. You're right, she said. I would. They stood together in comfortable silence, 2 broken creatures who had found each other in the vast darkness of space. Outside the window, the stars continued to shine. Cold and distant and beautiful. And the Rusty Comet flew on, carrying its small family toward whatever adventure waited next. Because that's what families do. They carry each other. Always.